The war in Ukraine has been a dominant feature here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and I'm delighted to say that I have the Belgian Prime Minister, Belgian PM De Croo, here joining me for a discussion on the global conversation. Thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
So you've been speaking here at these events, specifically about defence as well. You've been talking about defence cooperation, the need for no duplication among allies and their expenditure. Your country, though, isn't meeting the 2% target of GDP annually that NATO demands. You've got a plan in place to get there by 2035, but in the context of this invasion, why can't that happen quicker?
Well, we're definitely prepared to do our part. You know, if you want to be part of NATO, and solidarity is an important element of being under the NATO umbrella, everyone has to do their fair share, and we'll do it. But to me, there's a question of how much you spend, and there's also a question of how you spend it. What are the difficulties that we see as European countries today? Is that we do spend money, but it's incredibly fragmented. Our weapon systems are very different. It's very difficult to interoperate. If we buy equipment, we pay too much because we don't standardize. Second element is that the economic and the industrial return is just too low. I mean, if we want to spend more, I'd rather also have the industrial programs of European firms so that we develop technology and that we develop also technology that we can use outside the security world. Third element is to have more societal return. If we do this, I want cybersecurity investments to be to the benefits of everyone. If we do intelligence work, I want it to help to protect our industrial policies.
Now, the war in Ukraine has caused the sanctions, the EU sanctions against Russia. We're at a bit of a difficult moment right now with the sixth round, which includes an oil embargo. Everyone's sort of putting the blame on Hungary for blocking it, but there are other EU countries that are talking about this. We've got the summit, an EU summit coming up.
Yeah.
What's your position on this?
I'm going for a sixth package. I'm in favor of it. But let's listen to everyone. Everyone is looking at Hungary today, but it's not only Hungary who has difficulties with the complete oil ban. I mean, some countries are landlocked and they will have difficulties to have access to petrol for their cars and so on. If we take sanctions, the basic principle has always been it needs to hurt on the other side, and we need to mitigate the impact on our side as much as possible.
Do you think it can get over the line in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I think it's possible to get through the line, but we need to have answers to the concerns, which I think are legitimate concerns. And these concerns are not only Hungary's concerns; these are concerns for all European citizens. I mean, your foreign policy can only survive if your middle class is still able to defend it. I mean, having the buy-in from our population is an important thing, because I fear we're in for a long period of instability, and we need to make sure that people are not suffering too much.
You talk about the instability for the middle classes, but your country, Belgium, has the highest tax rate of any country in the 38 OECD countries.
That's not exactly true. There's other countries with high tax rates, but we are a welfare state with a very good healthcare system and so on. So yes, we are on the higher side of taxes, but people get a lot back in return.
Would you like to bring that down? Would you like to put in a plan?
The root cause of the problem today is that energy markets, and especially the gas market, the prices there are not reflecting reality. The prices that we see are not based on the fact that there is a shortage in the supply of gas. The supply of gas is the same as it used to be. Some countries have been cut off, but they are dealing with that. If we see that the market is not functioning, and this is having repercussions everywhere, I mean, I'm a believer of the free market. I'm a liberal. But if the free market is not functioning, if the market is not serving its purpose, you need to intervene. This is a point I have been making over the past weeks, and I see that more and more countries are realizing that all of us are ruining our public finances in trying to support our middle class.
Returning to Ukraine, the summit is going to be dominated by that discussion, the EU summit. Also looking at Ukraine's accession application to become a candidate country of the European Union. How in favour of that are you, and how quickly can it happen?
Well, the membership process is a long one, and there's a reason why it is a long process. That's because we have developed such a vast array of rules in Europe. If someone joins the European Union, they need to be ready. What Ukraine needs today is support. We give them support. When the war is over, and we always hope for the best, of course, is support in reconstructing Ukraine. And reconstructing Ukraine is on the material side, but it's also on the immaterial side. It's building up institutions, it's ensuring the rule of law, it's fighting corruption and so on. But to me, that is something else than the membership process. Now, one is not excluding the other, but the membership process is a long thing.
You mentioned the reconstruction there. The European Commission has just announced to help with sort of rebuilding Ukraine post-war. I know it feels like a long way off from that now. One of the suggestions is to raise common debt in the EU, like there was for the pandemic recovery fund. How in favour of that are you, using that common debt access, that mechanism again?
It's interesting how the instrument of common debt, which, let's say, a year ago was completely off the table, was something that could not be discussed. Finally, we've done it, and once you move the borders, then in the end, everyone sees that this is something useful. Common debt was useful for RRF. We still have a lot of things that we can do there. Now, which instrument we use for the reconstruction of Ukraine? Honestly, for me, as long as it is investment, common debt works for investment. You should never use it for current expenses. That would be wrong. Do we need to use it for Ukraine? Let me put it that way. To me, it's not excluded to do it, but I think it is too early to take a position on that.
How isolated do you feel Russia is? And do you think that that is a good thing in the long run?
They're very isolated. And the opposite of the isolation that Russia has is Ukraine is all over the place. Really, in any discussion, or Ukraine is present, or it's one part of the discussions. It shows, I mean, one is old politics and the other is new politics. And what Ukraine is doing is playing on something you could call seductive power. I mean, they're seducing the world with the story, with what they stand for, and so on. I think it's a very intelligent way of building a coalition around the cause you stand for.
Do you feel within the 27 leaders of the EU Council that the governments are now starting to crack among yourselves?
No, I don't think so. I think that, I mean, the unity that we have shown was a unity that was achieved because we listened to each other. I do not see that our capacity to build unity would be evaporated. It's just something we have to take into account, and that means that we will have to work a bit harder. But I'm convinced that that unity is the message that we give back to Russia, and I'm quite convinced that we will be able to keep that unity.
Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo, thank you so much for joining us on the Global Conversation on Euronews.